The flag is displayed, and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we could please do a roll call.
Good morning. Committee Member Hudson?
Here.
Committee Member Johnson?
Here.
Chair Kemp?
Here.
Committee Member Overman?
Here.
Committee Member McLean?
Here.
Committee Member Schussler? Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And with that, we will
I
move.
said here, just in case you couldn't hear me.
No, we could hear you just fine. It was loud and
Okay,
clear.
thank you.
With that, we will do approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
To approve.
Okay. I'm sorry, was that Mr. Johnson? Did you? And Mr. McLean was the second. And with that, if we can, can we just move to approve as a, okay. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Anyone opposed? Okay, seeing no opposition, we'll move now to public comment. And I understand that there is one person on the line for public comment. Mr. Rosas, are you there? Mr. Rosas? How about if I understand you have a second email for now. You could read the email if you would, Ms. Pettit, and then if Mr. Rosas gets on the line or gets connected, we'll take his call.
Yes, ma'am. Public comment was received from Gary Cloyd. Good afternoon, Ms. Arthur. This is for the Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee. Please read this into the records. Good morning, members of the Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee. This is regards to 4B TDP update Q3. Service areas and many factors were overlooked because of not enough information provided to the Board of Directors and CEO, Gary Cloyd. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Thank you. And is Mr. Rosas on yet? Okay. And hearing that, or we don't have him at this time, we're going to move next to the presentations. And the first presentation will be the FDOT Strategic Intermodal System, the SIS Plan update.
The Florida Department of Transportation is grateful for this opportunity.
Good morning, thank you, members. I'm Christopher, the Transit Program Administrator for FDOT. And this plan that you're about to see the video on, it's a statewide 5-year plan update. And the video pretty much explains everything in it. The comments and everything, we are requesting that those be done in writing. You may have that form ready or that can be provided. But without delay, I get to watch the video. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Florida Department of Transportation is grateful for this opportunity to present this update to the FDOT's Strategic Intermodal System Plan. Our goal today is to inform you about the purpose of this plan, why it matters, highlight the plan elements and emphasis areas, and discuss the proposed focus areas to get your input. The SIS is a statewide network of high-priority transportation facilities, including Florida's largest and most significant airports, spaceports, public seaports, freight rail terminals, passenger rail and intercity bus terminals, rail corridors, waterways, and highways. These facilities represent the primary means for moving people and freight between Florida's regions, as well as between Florida and other states and nations. Florida established the SIS in 2003 for many reasons, all of which are still relevant today. A primary reason was to help meet growing demand for moving people and freight as our population and economy continued to expand. The SIS was envisioned to support Florida's economic competitiveness by connecting our regions to markets within our nation and worldwide. Many industries require access to multiple modes of transportation, providing seamless flows of both people and goods. In addition, the SIS was intended to support the state's community planning goals by focusing transportation investments on existing transportation hubs and corridors, so we can maximize the use of the most current system. Finally, the SIS was intended to focus our essential state resources on those transportation facilities most critical to Florida's economy and quality of life. Florida statute requires the department to update the SIS Policy Plan at least once every 5 years, following the update to the Florida Transportation Plan, also known as the FTP. The SIS Policy Plan is developed by reviewing the most recent FTP goals and objectives to ensure the SIS Policy Plan is in line with the FTP. 2045 is the horizon year for the current FTP, and the SIS Policy Plan is an implementation action of the FTP. In addition, the process considers current trends and conditions, including applicable performance measures, to ensure the plan addresses key issues and opportunities for the SIS. The process requires collaboration and input gathered through various partner and public outreach efforts, such as partner briefings, social media outreach, virtual outreach, and surveys. The 35-member steering committee that guided the update of the FTP in 2020 is assisting with the update of the SIS Policy Plan this year. A public comment period will accompany the draft final plan in late 2021. Following the public comment period and final management approval, the final plan will be adopted. The SIS is made up of two basic components: SIS facilities, which meet high levels of people and goods movement, generally supporting major flows of interregional, interstate, and international trips, and strategic growth facilities, which are smaller in nature and generally are designated to support niche markets, underserved geographic areas, or other unique economic communities. The SIS includes three types of facilities: hubs, such as airports, seaports, and other types of terminals; corridors, such as highways, rail lines, and waterways; and connectors, which link the hubs and corridors or hubs to other hubs and military access facilities to corridors. The policy document generally addresses and includes the following topics. It defines objectives for how we plan and manage the SIS, consistent with the broader goals for the FTP. It outlines focus areas for the SIS that are to be addressed over the next 5 years as part of the plan update. It sets forth policies or strategies directed towards these objectives and focus areas. And lastly, it sets forth implementation guidance on how to carry the plan forward. The current 2016 SIS Policy Plan objectives still correlate to the current FTP goals related to mobility, transportation options, and economic competitiveness. They also continue to represent the long-standing framework of the SIS and its original intent. The 2022 SIS Policy Plan will focus on these 5 areas. Safety. How does the SIS, as a key element of the state's transportation system, contribute to our vision of eliminating fatalities and serious injuries on Florida's transportation system? Resilience. How can we reduce vulnerabilities of SIS infrastructure to risks including extreme weather, sea level rise, coastal and inland flooding, wildfires, and extreme heat? Technology and innovation. How do we prepare the SIS for emerging technologies, such as automated, connected, electric, and shared vehicles? Urban mobility and connectivity. How do we address the impact of congestion in both major and developing urban areas on the efficiency and reliability of the SIS for interregional travel, especially in areas where there are limited options for adding capacity to SIS corridors or limited modal alternatives to SIS highways? Rural mobility and connectivity. How can the SIS support rural revitalization and economic development, and facilitate emergency evacuation and response while supporting environmental stewardship goals and community visions. For each focus area, we will present some high-level ideas for improvements. Building on the FTP and SHSP, the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, we have identified several potential safety-related policies for inclusion in the SIS Policy Plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Increase the emphasis on safety as a factor in setting priorities for SIS projects. Provide more flexibility to include safety features as part of SIS capacity projects. Address engineering and operational solutions related to emphasis areas associated with higher fatality rates on the SIS. An example could be to add guardrails, rumble strips, or clear zones to address lane departures. We have identified several potential resilience-related policies for inclusion in the SIS Policy Plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Consider vulnerabilities in the community and environmental screening process as part of SIS designation. For example, if there are two options for a connector and one is in a storm surge zone, designate the alternative. Identify resilience strategies as part of capacity needs in projects. For example, use ITS or sensors to detect hazards and share information. Expand SIS funding eligibility for adaptation or retrofit of existing infrastructure. An example would be elevation change, base layer hardening, or stormwater management to help maintain the SIS facility's safety and capacity. We also might consider expanding the definition of capacity to include increasing redundancy or providing alternatives to mitigate vulnerabilities on the system. We have identified several potential technology-related policies for inclusion in the SIS Policy Plan. Here are some ideas based on input we received so far. Redefine SIS capacity projects to include technology solutions for improving efficiency and reliability. In other words, define SIS projects not just as increasing the physical capacity of a corridor, but also improving efficiency and reliability. Expand SIS funding eligibility beyond what is in the current plan to provide technology infrastructure, such as electric vehicle charging stations, smart signals, locational reference markers for connected vehicles, broadband for transportation purposes, etc. Provide more flexibility for funding emerging mobility solutions, such as quick response initiatives that could be funded in the current year. We have identified several potential policies regarding urban mobility and connectivity for inclusion in the SIS Policy Plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Redefine capacity projects to include mobility and reliability improvements, similar to the concept discussed under the technology section. Prioritize opportunities to improve interregional travel on the SIS. An example would be projects to create express or through lanes, create bypasses or other alternatives to bottlenecks, support truck parking or other freight accommodations, etc. This also could include providing more options for travel between Florida's largest urban areas, such as passenger rail or intrastate air service. Provide flexibility for use of SIS funds on non-SIS facilities when that is the best option to improve performance of the SIS. For example, if an SIS corridor is heavily congested and there are no viable options to add capacity to that corridor, could we use SIS funds to improve a parallel, arterial, or transit corridor if that improvement will pull local trips off the SIS and preserve capacity on the SIS for long-distance travel? We have identified several potential policies regarding rural mobility and connectivity for inclusion in the SIS Policy Plan. Here are some of the ideas based on input received so far. Reassess the SIS highway corridor criteria, particularly how we identify facilities capable of being improved to controlled access standards. This also could include how we consider context classification in the SIS designation/community and environmental screening process, where there is a choice. Focus SIS designation on the facilities in areas suitable for higher capacity corridors. Redefine capacity projects, in this case to include rural connectivity and through traffic improvements. This might include small projects, such as adding turning lanes or geometric improvements to improve SIS corridor safety. It also could mean expanding funding eligibility for broadband and other rural technology solutions that would improve connectivity. Strengthen rural corridor planning processes to identify programs of projects for both SIS and regional/local corridors. For example, think about how we improve a corridor like US 19, but also the connections from that corridor to rural activity centers. This could include stronger collaboration with local governments on how rural connectivity can support economic, community, and environmental goals. We value your input. Without it, the SIS cannot reflect the feedback from our partners and the public. What else do we need to do to improve these 5 focus areas? There is a public question form available if you would like to give us input. Please give your form to the FDOT representative, or you can email it or mail it to Lori Maribel, FDOT District 7 SIS Coordinator. Her information is at the bottom of the comment form. Following our targeted outreach efforts, we will draft recommendations for the plan based on input received. We will review the information with the FTP/SIS Implementation Committee and FDOT management. The draft plan will be available for public comment at the end of this year on the Systems Planning website. The final plan is anticipated to be adopted by early 2022. Thank you for allowing us to present the SIS Policy Plan update.
Thank you. And I guess it's recording, but I don't know if there's anyone that has questions about that.
I cannot hear the boardroom very well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, well, we'll try not. Can you not hear me, or was that the presentation you couldn't hear?
Sorry. I had the presentation just fine, and now I can hear you, but I could not hear you before, so it sounds as though if you're not right up on the mic, it's not coming through, and I don't believe that our audience would be able to hear it as well. So
Okay.
just let me know. Thank you.
I'm not sure why that is, but, because I haven't really moved the mic, but that's good, okay. So, is there anybody with, I just have a few questions about this, if you will. So, right now, is there an actual document we can look at?
I'll go back and check, but it's...
Your mic isn't on, I don't think, if we could get that.
Okay. I'm sure there is a document that we can get you. It's most likely, it might be the 2016 version, but if you wanted to start there, and I'm not sure if they put out any of the updates since that one yet.
So when people comment, they're just commenting on, I mean, I just have a good idea, or something like that, or they're not reflecting on any document that they want to, refer to or anything except for 2016?
Correct. It's because this is the 5-year update, so it'll be based on that document and anything that's contained in that. And so we'll be gathering the partner comments first, and then it'll go out to the public for comment.
So through 2022, that's the case, like right till this is submitted somewhere to the federal government? Okay. And then if people do want to make comments, even though they won't know what's in the document or not, how do they make comments? Where do they make comments? How long can they make comments? When does it start?
Right now, we're taking the input at the district level, and that's going to go up to Tallahassee. And then, as you heard in the presentation, there'll be a website where the public can actually see all the documents and do the public comment.
Okay, so there'll be a website, and you'll announce that later, what that website is, where people can do public comment?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, and that's going to be public comment's going to be open for what, like a year or something, or 6 months, or when does it open? And
Yeah, that's going to start probably in a couple months once they review the partner comments, and then they'll put that out, and then they're looking for adoption in early 22.
And who does it get adopted by, the MPO?
Well, it'll go through this process, and there's actually the committee, it's a 35-member committee up in Tallahassee, along with FDOT management, and so that's the actual approval committee, the same committee that did the FPT.
I see. Okay. Okay. Those are all my questions. I don't know if anybody else has, Mr. Hudson.
Hey, Chris, actually, question for Madam Chair. If we give, is this going to come up at the main board meeting? I mean, if we have questions, can we send them in so that they're discussed at the full board meeting?
I imagine so, because this is coming up again at everything that comes here comes to the.
Okay, cool. I don't want to be very redundant, but so I'll maybe send some in writing that you could share your answers with for the full board. But one question in the interim, I wasn't really familiar with the SIS, and it seems like a helpful framework for thinking about transportation at a statewide level. In the statutes, there's obviously the listing of the things that would be familiar for any type of system like that, the ports, airports, things like that. There is a mention of public transit facilities, so I was curious, historically, since the SIS was created, what, if any, public transit facilities in the state were designated as SIS facilities?
I don't think there has been much here in the local Tampa Bay area.
Or statewide, just anywhere in the state?
Probably it's in South Florida.
Okay.
In the Miami districts and everything. I know they're far and few between, but at least it sounds like it's going to be more open to people movement.
Okay, gotcha. And is this SIS sort of I wouldn't say a conduit, but is this something that when you're looking at federal infrastructure investment that may or may not be coming out to the states, that would be used as sort of a sorting mechanism for any federal expenditures that flow through to the state as opposed directly to local governments?
Yeah, a lot of those large projects will include federal funding, so a lot of this will tie together.
Gotcha. And then there was kind of the last question is resilience. What is, not you personally, but what is the department's thought on what does that mean? Because I've found it gets thrown around a lot.
Into a HART context, I think your maintenance facility is in a flooding area and you're exposed to that a lot. So I know there's special funding that we're working on for that as well.
Gotcha.
And so it's that type of thing, is to selecting the best options and helping what we already have, keep in good shape.
Spend a little bit of money so you're not spending money forever on the same recurring issues? Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Member Hudson, I was also, considered that we'd have continuing questions, but since you had raised some of the questions that you just raised, I think it's accurate to say there's a policy that is a Florida statutory policy that commits, 65% of our funding that we receive to the SIS exclusively?
I'm not sure exactly what those percentages are, but I'm sure they are outlined in that.
In the 2016 report, that they'll be outlined in that, so we can see what that is?
I'm sure it is, yes.
And in terms of facilities, I think they call it the multimodal center at the airport in Orlando. It's a massive parking garage at one of the terminals, but I think there might be some others, but in terms of the transit. But I understand too that the converted CSX Sunrail in Orlando, I think that and Tri-Rail in Miami-Dade and the other counties are part of the SIS. Is that accurate?
I can't verify 100%, but I believe you are correct.
That would be good. So I think those are facilities that are now under the SIS. But thank you very much, and I don't see.
Just as a recommendation.
Sure.
I know we've been mentioning the document. It would be nice for the board to maybe get an executive version of the brief if they have it. I'm sure they have an executive version of the overall plan from 2016.
I will take that back,
brief.
and if there is one exists, we'll make sure that you all
Yeah.
get it.
If we can share that with the board, I think that would help too.
And Commissioner Overman, I see your hands up.
Thank you very much. I apologize if I'm asking questions that Mr. Hudson was asking, because I couldn't hear him, but I could hear you too, so thank you. I know that we're in the process of developing HART's strategic plan, and the TPO has taken on with the regional TMA the goal of developing the strategy and long-term planning for including passenger rail as an option. And it's going to be coordinating the meetings, including HART's participation in how we fit our goals for transit service in Hillsborough in the plan. Recently, apparently HART was asked to come present our strategic plan just to bring the MPO or TPO members up to speed on that process so it could be included in the planning that FDOT has agreed to in addressing passenger rail as an option in our region. The question I have is, given that this is the SIS is a 5-year plan, and it may not have included much in the way of passenger rail in the past, we also have recently been asked to update the rail plan for the state of Florida. They're updating that plan as well. How can we work with the TPO, FDOT, as this SIS is put together to include any potential opportunities, including the FTA federal process, of exploring passenger rail in Hillsborough County?
Well, firstly, this plan will have the 2045 as the horizon year, so it gets updated every 5 years. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as things are being developed. And you know, the continued communication with our partners is something we're going to rely on. So any input that you have through your own plans and everything, you know, certainly those are items to bring up as suggestions and make sure that those are being addressed as well as they can be in this plan.
Thank you for that, because the developing a passenger rail service in Hillsborough County has been on the TPO's priority list for over 30 years. And the discussion at the TPO level has been to move at least the exploration of how it fits within our transit system locally as well as regionally. So that was why I was going to check and see, as Commissioner Kemp asked, you know, who's on the implementation committee, and when do we, as a HART board, need to provide you with an update on how passenger rail possibly fit within our strategic plan. We're not there yet. Our plan doesn't come into place, or at least have a goal deadline late until next year, next fall, or December of next year. So how do we make sure that this update includes those goals?
I would suggest that any comments that you would have of where you might, what stage you might be in, provide those comments so that they can get in as early as possible.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I think we are finished here, and thank you.
And thank you for enduring that video. It's a lengthy video.
We'll move next to the Transit Development Plan Quarter 3 update.
Morning, morning, board members. Okay, there we go. This morning, I'm going to give you a brief update of our Quarter 3 progress for highlights of projects in the Transit Development Plan. Again, just a real brief background. Our TDP is this multi-year financial plan that we put out every 5 years and update with minor TDPs in between during that time. This is a state mandate. And currently we've begun working on our minor update internally. We're about, I'd say we're about 20-25% done with that progress. Originally this year, just an update on the major extension. This year was originally supposed to be our major TDP update. Due to the extenuating circumstances of AFT, all of the COVID that's going on, and the new administrative changes with the strategic plan that we have coming up, Both HART and DOT both came to the consensus that it would be in the best interest of the agency for us to extend our deadline for the major TDP one more year. And so we did get that formal approval from DOT in Q3. So we will be doing our major update next year. And that will really give us a great advantage in being able to align it properly with our strategic plan. So this year we will be again doing the minor update, and we look forward to working with you all as well and doing the major update next year.
Chris, you might want to update your slide. It shows 2021 still. December 21.
I apologize. I will do that. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. So our major updates, briefly, that we have for Q3 as they relate to the TDP are really related to our two largest projects that you all are probably familiar with, the Tampa Arterial BRT, our Task 5, the recommended alignment PD&E that the board unanimously approved and moving forward with last August. Is moving along. It is scheduled to be completed at the end of this year, potentially in January of next year. But that is the current schedule for the end of Task 5 at that point in time. That will be coming back to the board for further discussion on how we move forward with that project. The second major project out of the TDP that we've been focused on in Q3 has been the FTA TOD pilot program. At this point in time, we're about 60% completed for that project. During this recent quarter, we've really been heavily focused on developing the framework, policy framework and evaluation of station area planning efforts closely with our partners, the NPO, the city, and we look forward to being able to present those findings to you here in the near future as an update. I apologize, I failed to mention here the arterial BRT project in whole at this point in time is about 55% complete. Moving on, the services as outlined in the TDP. Again, this quarter we are unable to expand the services as outlined due to COVID. Just didn't obviously make sense at this point in time for us to be investing in expanding the services. And in fact, on June 13th, our service modifications were made to really better align with the current demand and maximize the service reliability. And that has been extremely successful at this point in time. I do know that we've been getting reports of 100% pullouts as a result of that service modification. So that has been a successful, although we haven't been able to expand service, we've been very successful in being able to make that modification for June. So those are really the three big highlights. We are constantly working on other projects and initiatives throughout the agency. So if you all have any questions, be happy to answer those at this time.
I'm looking here. You didn't, okay.
This is the last one, sorry.
Okay. What is the status on the Florida Fowler arterial BRT?
So at this point in time, we are, the PD&E is really looking at currently stationary locations and really honing in on formalizing the recommendations for the cross-sectional, how the cross-sectional recommendations will be along the alignment. It's very complex, being the limitations that we have as they vary in the corridor, particularly on Florida Avenue. So we have there's a few different alternatives that are being worked out, and they're establishing some criteria to pick out the best recommendation to bring forward to you all in the end. And in addition, with all that's going on in Fowler Avenue, with DOT is also doing a significant study on Fowler Avenue on how they want to move forward in redoing Fowler Avenue in terms of whether they want to make it more of a sort of a parkway almost, and their alternatives, and ensuring that we work together collaboratively with DOT to ensure that our project fits in with what it is that they're looking to do as well. There are definitely some conflicting ideas there in how we want to move forward, but we're working very closely and very diligently and looking at what the best compromise may be for bringing BRT to the Fowler corridor, but also meeting the needs and expectations for DOT, as that is a state road and corridors.
When you just use the word parkway, is that something would Boulevard have suited as?
Sorry, thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
I do that a lot too. I just wondered, because I was just trying to conceive of what exactly you were referring to. So we, at this time, I've been, anxious for that for about 20 years. So I'm just trying to figure out, I also, look at it in terms of perhaps funding opportunities, but doesn't sound like we're near the end right now.
Well, I think, in the Heights area right now, we have an opportunity that you all had supported in a lane elimination opportunity. You all supported in a letter of support to DOT in a lane elimination in the Heights area that went along in their RAISE grant application recently for when they do all the, I believe it's a large-scale stormwater project in the lower half of the project, for us to be able to leverage an opportunity if construction is done. Along with that project, we can get a lane done with that in conjunction. That would help save us some money. But yes, I mean, overall, looking at the long-term vision of the project, it's definitely a challenge that we're going to have to discuss further, and that's going to be a major part of the decision and how we want to move forward. We're going to come fully prepared to present you with multiple options so that we can make the best choice in moving forward, and what's attainable in the short term, while keeping the long-term vision available for the corridor.
And Florida Avenue, as well as Nebraska, they're part of the SIS?
I'll have to bring back a definitive answer for you on that.
Okay.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. And I don't see anyone else with their hands raised. Has the extending the transit development plan update, has that ever been brought to the board before? I know you said FDOT approved it, but.
So we do, on an annual basis, the board does have to approve. So every year we do bring it before the board. to approve, and then we send it to DOT, and they send it to central office, and it is signed off on to ensure that it's in full compliance of the expectations of what's needed in a TDP. So yes, we do bring the TDP for an overview and discussion before the.
So an extension would have to be approved by us first.
The extension did not need to be approved by the board. We discussed with DOT, and we did move forward with that. That was the recommendation that we felt was best for the situation at the time. And DOT wasn't in agreement with it, so we moved ahead with that.
Okay. I don't see any other questions at this time, so thank you for that. And we don't really have anything else to move on to at this time, but for public comment, Mr. Rosas, who didn't make for public comment the first time, is on the line at this time. Mr. Rosas?
You're being asked to unmute yourself. To unmute, press *6. You are unmuted.
Mr. Rosas, I guess we don't have him. I guess we don't have him. So we might have to try for next time. I'm sorry to miss your comments, or maybe you could make them at the regular meeting if you're hearing this, and we'll try to make sure that we get that, because I know Mr. Rosas has been very interested in following HART and has good input to put, so sorry to miss your comments. At this time, I'll call for any old business.
Yes, Madam Chair, I
Yes.
have a couple of updates, and one, I wanted to provide a response to your last question regarding the extension for the TDP. So staff, when we did the last quarterly update, I believe it was in April, if my memory is correct, but we did have a conversation there that we were going to inquire about getting an extension to the TDP for the reasons that Mr. Cochran presented. So it was presented that was our approach. We shared that with the board, and from our discussion, there was support for us to move forward and get the extension. It's a formal process with FDOT, so we had to go back and forth, make sure we had the right language and the right supporting documentation. It's not something that you just get because you ask for an extension. You have to meet certain criteria, and we were able to meet those and move forward. As it relates to the TDP update, staff have been engaged in our budget process, which you have all seen several presentations, but a part of what you're also going to hear is that in our budget proposal, we're looking to add money so that we can update the TDP appropriately, as well as complete the COA. I know those are a lot of acronyms, so I'm going to back up a little bit. So the COA is our comprehensive operational analysis, which, if you think of it, is the macro study. So it's looking at our service area from a macro level and really understanding where our supply and demand is currently and where it's projected to be. Whereas the TDP is more of the micro level study, which is the transit demand plan, and it's really for us to understand what's going on the ground today. So TDP is more about today, COA is more about the future, inclusive of today. What really will be beneficial for HART with this extension is we can finish the future vision with the COA and really understand from data analysis, where the demand is coming. We recognize that our communities across the globe have changed because of the pandemic, but being able to update that document and have more information associated with growth where demand is, where we're seeing permits being approved on the ground today, just getting a better understanding of that, and then using that information to connect directly to our mobility solutions, what they look like, what are the right projects to move forward. So the reason why I'm sharing this level of detail is that I know as a board, as a community, we've held on to a list of projects in the TDP, and we have some, some of us may have some emotional connections to some of the projects, others may not be so keen on some of the projects, but I just wanted to share that because of this process and these changes, some of the projects may look different. Some of the discussions that we'll have around the TDP, I will say, will probably be different. And some of the solutions that would be the best to meet the needs may be different solutions as well. And I just want everyone to know as we continue through, it's really about finding the right solution for the challenges that we have. And sometimes, going back to basics may be the best solution, and the bright, shiny new object may not be what we need at the time. So I'm just throwing that out there to ground us all as we continue this process. And just wanted to share with you that, transparency is key, and we did, share with you this approach. And what I can do is have staff go back and just confirm which board meeting it was or committee meeting it was when we talked about asking for the extension. And we'll just send that to you offline just so you can see that in your records.
And Mr. Graham, just hearing that confirmation, thank you for refreshing my memory, because sometimes, these things just travel, and it's difficult to keep track of each one, so that's fine. For me, that suffices.
No, definitely, and I recognize that there's a lot of moving parts, and it's our job to keep you informed and let you know what we've done in the past. So, and so for new business, I also wanted to share that we are moving forward with the strategic planning effort. When I presented the strategic planning process at the last committee meeting with the team, Justin and Lorena did the formal presentation, and then we had a very, I would say, robust conversation. I mentioned that the next steps would be to continue our process internally in the organization. So I wanted to report back today that thus far we have met with several of the departments. Hopefully I'm not going to leave anyone off, but we met with operations and maintenance. We've met with the marketing and communications group, with policy and procedures, with IT. And these meetings are with the entire team and really talking to staff about their vision for the organization, understanding from, their portfolio of offerings, what do they see as our future, what are some of the challenges that they think we have to face and address in order to achieve that future. So those meetings started this month, and we'll have another round in September with the intention of coming out of September with an internal vision that's reflective of staff input to present to the board before we go externally to our partners in community to have them validate our vision. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. And I will share that, and hopefully I know staff listens or they dial in later after work on YouTube, but from my impression, most of the conversations are really focused on how do we do more with what we have, right? And what does that look like for us? I would share that the marketing team, it was a great conversation, and one of the questions they asked was, what is our story? And it makes sense from a marketing group, right, because that's their job. But they wanted to know, what is our story? What is the story and what is the message that we are trying to convey externally so that they can make sure that all of our documentation speaks to that? So I am very excited about the ideas that are coming from the team, and I look forward to giving you an update at our October meeting. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarity, and you might have to say it 10 more times, but because it is, sometimes hard for those of us who aren't professionals and aren't at heart every day to keep all the moving parts on track and to understand how it moves through the process. So that's very good, and I think you probably cannot say it enough to lay down a philosophy, and I just think it's very good for us. So we're starting in a new direction, and that's, I am very, as has been said several times by many board members, excited about that kind of new direction that we're moving in. And so with that, do we have any old business? Any new business? And hearing none, we'll adjourn.